Yes, it's transfer deadline day, or as Celtic fans like to call it, Tuesday. It's probably a little bit harsh because we have signed 2 players today. We're going to chat about all of that on today's video. Thanks very much everyone for joining us. Wow, 250 people on already, John. That's how keen people are to chat about transfers.
Yeah, it's an exciting day. I always think a little bit too much is put on it in terms of what's going to happen. But I think it's a good stopping point to review what's been done by Celtic over the whole summer, and that's basically what it's all about. There's already plenty of debate fighting about online, so we should get stuck into it as well.
Yeah, we are going to chat about the business Celtic have done both today and in the window as a whole. Both players coming in, players leaving. We may even mention that old famous Peter Law statement, we look to come out of every window stronger than when we went into it. That may raise its head at some stage. We're also going to bring you any breaking news that does arise, possibly a mercurial French talent leaving the club. We'll all have a wee cry at that stage. Stevie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, and I have to say you're appropriately dressed for Celtic's funeral today on deadline day of all days.
I know, I didn't really think it out. I was kind of looking in my suitcase and it was all just blue and red ties, and I'm thinking I need to go for a kind of darker one, but if I had a big bright green one it would have been ideal.
Doing a few lodge functions, Hamish, is that what's been happening?
I think we'll move the conversation on before I get myself in any sort of trouble. We know what you wonderful people on YouTube are like. Where do you want to start then, guys? John?
I think we should start with what's been done today in terms of incomings, because Celtic have announced 2 new players. I know that we've kind of known about them for a long time, but Georgios Giakoumakis, is that how we're pronouncing this? Better not do a Pat Bonner. And Jota from Benfica, apparently. So, yeah, let's start there. What are your feelings on those 2 specifically, you know, out with of the context of everything else going on at Celtic? Do you like the look of those 2 players, Stevie?
It's a hard one to tell because I don't want to be negative, because I'm glad we've actually got 2 players in, but we did need more. And I look at Jota, I specifically said I didn't want to sign any project players, you know, or anything like that, any players that were just developing. We need somebody to come in and hit the ground running. I mean, that's the reality of it. If we are serious, and we want to be serious as a club about pushing on in the league in all fronts domestically, but also in Europe, we know how important Europe is for us this season. We can't just be buying in guys that are looking to develop for other teams. That was what I was worried about the entire time. You know my feelings on loans. I've been consistent for the last 5-6 years since I've known you guys, and I just feel with the fact that we've got another loan in, it's slightly disappointing, I have to say. We need some players that can come in and actually challenge the players and even oust the players that are currently there that we've got. That's just my take on it. I don't know how you guys feeling though.
Option to buy, isn't it? For I'm going to say Jota. That's what I'm going with, without meaning to sound like what's the guy, FM Wonder Kid or FC Wonder Kid or something on YouTube. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he basically butchers names. I'm going with Jota. There's an option to buy there, as far as I'm aware. He's a young guy who's going to have, you know, a point to prove. Clearly, a very talented player who seems to have maybe over the last couple of years not had the game time that perhaps he deserved. So, to be honest, the players we've signed in general this summer, I'm really enthused with the quality that we've seen so far playing for Celtic. Players coming in straight away and making an impact. You know, Abada, Kyogo, Joe Hart have all made an impact. I think the profile of the players we've tried to sign has been very different from what we've seen from Celtic previously. Yes, Abada's a teenager. Jota is I think pretty young as well, but apart from that, you know, we're looking at players who are very much in their prime or just coming into their prime. I think that's great. I think we've made a lot of good signings. My problem is the thing that, you know, takes this window down maybe from an 8 or a 9 that it could have been. I just feel as if everything's taken too long, and I think we're 2 or 3 bodies short, and I don't think there's any real excuses for us not to be bringing in those extra 2 or 3 bodies. You look at the money that we've spent. I think I've got the exact fee, I'll come on to it later. I think it's about 19 million we've spent. We've brought in, I think, nearly double that. I think we've brought in about 36 million in total this summer. For me, there's no excuses why we couldn't have had, you know, another 2 or 3 players of similar quality to add to this squad. But in general, John, I think that the quality of players we've signed has been good.
I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate here, but it kind of chimes my own thoughts. At that point, you're signing 14, 15 players, and how realistic is that really? For me, there's three things here. I don't think the squad is as strong as it needs to be, but I think there's a reality that it probably never was going to be. And I'm not absolving the club of any blame there, but I still think we're paying the price of Peter Lawwell and Neil Lennon's inability to plan ahead.
100%.
And I think we're suffering the effects of that. I also think Ange's got a good squad with good players that we've seen so far he can get something out of. But I think the reason there's disappointment is because you look at the depth of the squad and there is real issues there. I mean, if you take a singular position, the central midfield position, right? So we lost Scott Brown from there. We lost Olivier Cham from there. We lost Ryan Christie from there. He's traditionally played centrally for us, even though he's been played on the left under Ange. We've lost those three players, and all we've brought in is James McCarthy. And I think that's a failing of the club not to identify another central midfielder. At the same time, I look in other places, and we have signed 11 players. I know if you include Liam Shaw and Uragidi, it's 9 players if you don't. And that's still, I mean, if I'm thinking back to the start of the summer window, that's probably about the amount that I would have expected Celtic to sign. Unfortunately, I do agree, I don't think the squad isn't as strong as it needs to be. But I don't know if it was always going to be fixed in this 6 to 8 week window. I think that's the reality where we're at. And the players that have come in, I haven't seen promising signs from them. But I'm with you guys. I do feel hesitant to celebrate the transfer window too much because there are still deficiencies in the squad.
We've got, I counted them just prior to this video, a minimum of 25 matches coming up, including the derby match at the start of 2022. 25 matches minimum. You're probably, if we beat Wraith Rovers, it'll obviously be at least 26. For me, Stevie, it's just a squad that's a couple of injuries away in key areas. And bear in mind, we're in a time when COVID, touch wood, but going into the winter months, COVID could wreak havoc again, in football. We saw what happened last season with Celtic. I just think we're 2 or 3 injuries or, COVID or whatever away from having, a similar issue to what we had on Sunday. We're having to play a Juranovic out of position or having to play someone else. I take John's point on board and I agree with it. I think we were always, set for this circumstance because the negligence that went on at the club, not just last season, but if we're honest, probably even including Brendan Rodgers' time, our business in the market was pretty poor. I understand we're in that situation, but this is the situation where we're at, and I just feel we're 2 or 3 bodies short when you look at those 25 matches.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're being very short-sighted with it as well. You were talking about last season in terms of what happened with Celtic. I take you back to last week. We just saw what happened with Rangers, and we're getting into an international break. We've got a lot of internationalists who are going to be travelling all over the world. This COVID is rife again, and you add all that up, and we are just tempting fate when the players come back. It wouldn't shock me if a couple do come back positive, especially the Scotland players we've got. I think if you look at that midfield and you take away Callum McGregor out of that, right away we're at a complete disadvantage, and that's what I'm saying. I can't believe, not only that, you're talking about like COVID and injuries, but what about form? Are we just forgetting about form? Like, what about everybody? Stephen Welsh is riding in the crest of the wave now, and everybody says how good he is. What happens if Stephen Welsh has an absolute howler? What happens if Starfelt, doesn't? I know that on Sunday people say they might kick on from his performance there, but what happens if he goes back the way? Are we going to rely on Neil Beaton coming back? Is that how it is? Are we going to just then rely on Dane Murray? We really should have been getting in a defender, and I agree, another central midfielder. So it's very short-sighted for the club. I hope it doesn't come back to bite us, but knowing Celtic, we all know that we're one of the most unluckiest clubs. And if something does come back to bite us, you can imagine that it probably will, knowing the way Celtic are and how we've operated in the last 18 months.
If I stick that slide I just had on screen again, John, what are the weak areas?
Again, it's basically what me and Stevie have just said. I think it's that midfield area. I mean, imagine something happens to McGregor, or McGregor goes through a dip in form because of the amount of matches he's played. James McCarthy's still getting up to full speed. Liam Shaw looked good in pre-season, but untested, completely untested for us competitively. And I don't have, Tom Rogic and David Turnbull are definitely further forward players. So looking at that number 6 role, not sure about Sorrow at all. So I have real concerns about that central midfield. I think once you start getting Julian back in the centre defence, it's looking a bit more comfortable there. I think one of the big surprises, I feel like might be Liam Scales, who can play both as a centre half and as a left back. I think he might surprise people in the sense that people have marked him down as a project signing, but he's actually 23 years old and he's got bags of experience over in Ireland. We can be snobby about it all we want and say it's a massive step up, and it is for him. But by all accounts, I've not seen anyone who watches Irish football say anything bad about this guy. So I've got a feeling that he might be a surprise package and might help us out in those areas. But yeah, I'm looking at that midfield. I'm looking at the wings as well. I mean, Abada and Forrest. We know Forrest has injury problems over the last 18 months. Mikey Johnston's perennially injured. Karim Okudembele's actually out for a long time. So we're struggling on those areas too. Stevie, what's your glaring issue there on that screen?
Same. I think it's centre half for me. I know what you're saying about the midfield area as well. It's very, very, very weak. But I just feel with Starfelt and Welsh, we're getting into a really tough run of games with these two players who have been still getting heavily criticised one way or another, individually or as a pairing. And I just feel getting into the games in the league and then getting into the Europa League matches just with they two is a massive, massive gamble. I really thought I expected the club to be going out and making us a signing in defence, and the fact that we haven't done that is red flags for me. It really is. And I think we're all going to try and get behind Welsh and Starfelt. We want to see them succeed, but we really need another experienced body in there, because everybody's saying, Chris Julian coming back and everything will be fine, but will it? I mean, his injury problems are well documented. Yeah. And what I honestly think is the club are looking at Chris Julian coming back and saying, it's like a new signing, pulling that chestnut. But I don't have complete faith in Julian to stay injury free this season. I really don't. If he comes back, I don't want to sound negative or harsh with it. It's just the reality.
I agree. I mean, I agree totally, and it's something I've said prior as well, that people have it in their head, Julian comes back and, that's the problem solved. From memory, I think Julian, prior to the injury he sustained, I think it was Boxing Day, I think he was injured prior to that last season for maybe a shorter period of time. I think it was maybe a month or so. Was it not? I think so, and he came back and maybe played, 6 or 7 games, then was injured again. I really like Christopher Julian. I think, if it's Christopher Julian and Starfelt as much as Welsh, I think Welsh could be a good player for us. I think he is a decent enough player. I think that's a decent kind of selection of defenders there in general, but Julian is just so injury prone, and I would have loved another loan signing in there. I know Carter Vickers was mentioned over the course of the summer. I know Itakura that went to Schalke was mentioned. The Croatian fella Vuskovic has gone to Hamburg, I think, today. He's another guy who was mentioned. I would just have liked one more body in there, because you've got to remember, we've lost Christopher Ayer, say what you want about him, we've lost Shane Duffy, a player who played a lot of football for us last season. Might not have been very good, granted, but he played a lot of football, and I don't think we've replaced numbers enough in this squad. We're getting all our moaning out of the way, everyone, because there are positives, I think. See if we bring up the players we've brought in. I mean, when you look at the money spent there, John, just under 20 million, it's a lot of quality there, seemingly, for spending that kind of money in the modern day.
Yeah, I think that's a good return on that investment from what I've seen of Abada and Kyogo so far. Obviously, very encouraging. Kyogo looks like an immediate star. I think he's the player, obviously, most ready to go out with that lot. But I think even Joe Hart's, he's had a mistake or two, but I think he's calmed down that defence, and he's very vocal, and is someone in the dressing room that Ange really wanted. And again, I think Scales is going to be a surprise package. Thought Juranovic was good against Rangers in an uncomfortable position, so I think there's hope there for the majority. I think even Starfelt, I know there's been a lot of debate about Starfelt. I don't think he had a very good game at Ibrox. I know some people think that he did have a good game, but I think I've seen bits of Starfelt that I think he can improve on as well. I don't think he's going to be as awkward looking this time in 6 months. I think he's going to grow into this role, hopefully. So I definitely have hope about the signings that Ange has put in. And I think, importantly, Ange just looks comfortable working with all of them because he's used pretty much all of them immediately. It's not been a case of they've been on the bench or they've been in training for a long time. I know McCarthy's been the exception to that, but he didn't have a pre-season, so that was difficult. So I think there's hope in that regard. I'm not too despondent because I think Ange has got a group of good players, and I think he's got a group of players that he knows he can get performances out of. So I'm not here, completely writing off our chances this season. Again, the depth issues could come back to bite us. That's what we're saying here, and that's the problem. But again, I come back to what was the realistic chances of signing 15 players this summer. I just don't think that was ever going to happen. I think it's not even about the money spent. I mean, it's just the organisation that would take. I think one of the things that we might reflect on is that we didn't bring on a recruitment consultant after Nick Hammond left. We don't have this director of football. I think all of that could have been done last season. I think all of that should have been worked on from last December or November. And that might be something that we'll look back on and see as a failure because there's been reports in different outlets such as the Athletic that other clubs haven't really known who our point person on transfers has been, and that's held up negotiations on an outgoing basis. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's been a little bit haphazard and an incoming basis too, and we know that Ange has been pretty hands-on with it, but he's had so much to do with the squad. So we could well regret not having that person in place and relying on old scouting and relying on people, that the scouting of people who perhaps have left the club now. So that's all its own issues and that's all its own problems. But for me, the players that we've brought in, I'm actually happy with that group. Yeah.
I mean, I know we've got a lot of games coming up, but there's an argument that these players, without McCarthy being fit, without Juranovic in the team, without Giakoumakis and Jota being part of I'm already regretting that. I just need to go with the proper J. I'm sorry. I need to just go Jota. There was someone in the comments was saying that he's done an interview with Jerry McCulloch where he's pronounced it Jota. So I've just made a fool of myself in front of over 1,000 people. But we've seen the team already performing, putting 6 past St Mirren and Dundee without these players. And I think what we all realise now is that Ange is, I think he's a pretty special talent as a manager, and I think he's someone who is going to take us forward. At what speed he takes us forward, who knows, that remains to be seen. But I think we've got the nucleus of a good squad there. As I say, without repeating myself, I would just elect a couple of more bodies in there because I think we're basically playing 2 games a week now until January when the players get a 3-week break. In January, I think we'll probably add to the squad as well. Maybe it was just unreasonable as supporters to expect more players to come in. But as supporters, you're always going to want the perfect transfer window, aren't you? You're always going to want that extra player, that extra right back or goalkeeper that you don't even need. That's just what supporters are like. Departures, guys, just a lot of these happened a long time ago. Scott Brown, obviously, right at the top of the list. Scott Brown used to play for Celtic, in case you're a new Aussie fan. What are the ones, Stevie, that jump out to you there that maybe haven't been replaced?
I would say so far, Christopher Ayer, because of the style of defender he is. Now, we talk about Ange Ball, and Christopher Ayer, I think, would have been a perfect defender for that, a player. Him next to Starfelt, that would have been Starfelt's perfect partner, a guy that can take the ball, carry it out of defence, take the pressure away from Starfelt, just let Starfelt do the absolute basics and defend. And Christopher Ayer could have, went these big galloping runs that we know he's capable of, get the ball away from defence into midfield and start an attack. I think we're really going to miss Chris Ayer. I know that he annoyed me with certain phases of his game, okay, but he was a brilliant player for us. Some bit of business, I guess, as well, but we're no business in. We just want to see Celtic keep their best players and do well in the park. And I honestly do feel Ayer, as we see in the season, progressing, is going to be such a huge miss for his style of defending, just how quickly he got the ball into midfield for our players last season when they were at their worst as well. Can you imagine Ayer this season, like getting the ball quickly to Callum McGregor, who's then feeding our guys like Abada, Furuhashi and that? Can you imagine that? That would be a dream. gutted that we sold him. I understand that the writing was on the wall where he was wanting to leave, and it was the worst kept secret into over the summer. But I think we are going to see, as the season goes on and we haven't signed another defender, I think we're really going to miss Chris Ayer big time.
Scott Brown, has he been replaced for you, John?
People will point to McCarthy. Now, we've not seen a lot from McCarthy yet, so McCarthy is a player with huge experience of top flight football in England, so I don't think he can be discounted. I think a lot of people point to his injury problems, but I think a lot of that is based on his time at Everton rather than at Crystal Palace. I think last season he was available for the vast majority of their games. So I don't really have too much concerns about his fitness over the course of a season. It's just about getting up to that point. And, you know, we knew that because he didn't have a pre-season. And every other signing we've had have been at clubs, you know, training and playing matches. So that's why they've been thrown in immediately. I don't think he's been replaced because I don't think Scott Brown, it was ever realistic to replace Scott Brown. Because Scott Brown is Scott Brown. He was something unique. I think McGregor's taken on some of his responsibility as captain. And I think McGregor's probably better in that deeper role anyway. So I don't think I ever expected the club to replace Scott Brown. It's just about having the quality and options in midfield that we need. In terms of players leaving, I was happy to see Lee Griffiths go today. What did you think about that? Obviously, we're sick of Lee Griffiths, all three of us, I think. But I think it's good to get him off the books and just move on from that whole chapter. But it does make me question other players at the club, like Albion Ajeti. What's going on with him? You know, he looks miles off it as well.
Well, at the start of the season, I would have said that Griffiths was probably a more reliable option than Albion Ajeti. And Albion Ajeti is seemingly the one who's been given a little bit more licence to go and impress. I mean, when I say licence, he's been given, like, I think 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here when we're 5 or 6-0 up. I just really hope that Albion Ajeti is going to show that hunger that he showed in glimpses when he came on against St Mirren a couple of weeks ago. I know that shows how far and how poor he's been for us when we're, you know, clinging on to him, helping set up the 6th goal against a 10-man tyrant St Mirren. But there were signs when he came on there that something had just maybe flicked for him and he was wanting to impress. When you look at our striking options now, you know, we've got Kyogo, who I think now will be a striker. I certainly hope he will be a striker after the way Sunday went. I think Ange basically admitted that we're more of a threat when Kyogo's up top, and who could deny that? When Kyogo's moved up front on Sunday at Ibrox, we immediately became more of a threat. So I think he needs to be a striker right now. If you've got Kyogo, Giakoumakis, who scored a lot of goals last season, I kind of feel he'll do quite well for us. I don't know how you guys feel. I kind of feel like he'll score a lot of goals for us. And if you've got Ajeti as well, being the Ajeti that we thought we'd signed, I don't think that's too bad up top, considering we play one striker, you know, every game pretty much.
I think Giakoumakis is going to be really interesting signing. He's top scorer in the Dutch league last season, but didn't really do a whole lot before that. So
Nah.
If he's a late bloomer, that would be fantastic. I mean, if he can bring that kind of form to Scotland, he'll obviously be a big hit. He looks more of a physical type player, someone who will play through the middle, which is interesting when you do consider Kyogo, because I do think he is obviously more of a threat in most of our matches playing through the middle. But I think for a lot of opposition, it'll be good enough to have Kyogo on the left. Do you think we needed that physical presence in attack, Stevie? Do you think we needed a player like that?
I did remember I was on here after I'm going to just say Jablonic is part of the gig pod gimmick, but when we won that 4-2 game against them, I remember I was on with yourself and David Hamish, and I said that for our style it's all very well and good, just, you know, having Kyogo through the middle, but I did want to see us have a battering ram up front. I wanted to see us with a physical presence, and we're going to need that in some games, like for example away to Livingston on that park. Now, if it's not working, we do need a plan B, and I'd like to see what this guy's all about, and hopefully that is going to be our plan B. I'm not saying just lump it up the park and play minging football, but we will need a guy who'll put himself about and, you know, body some of the Scottish defenders as well, who will look to rough up Kyogo. So it's important that that's no our only outlet. It's good that we are going to have another option. I'm all for it when I look at your record last season too. As John says, if he is a late bloomer, fine.
He looks like he can play though as well. He really looks like he can play. He can take the ball in. He scores a lot of chipped goals, a lot of slide finishes. He kind of looks like the player we hoped Ayeti would be. Maybe there's similarities there in the way they play.
I've always seen Ayeti as a player who comes deep a bit like Edouard. He's got that kind of more creative element to him. He's pitched as an out-and-out goal scorer, but I've never really seen him play like that for us. I think the good point about Kyogo there. Now, I don't think Kyogo's a weak player. And I know you weren't saying that, Stevie, but because he gets up from challenges that he receives. But I do agree with you. He has been targeted already. I mean, you can see it every week, and Ange has already spoken about it, and that will lead to bumps and bruises and knocks over the course. So I do agree with it. We need a physical presence in there. I'm pretty happy with that signing actually, and I think at £2.5 million or whatever it's reported to be in that ballpark, I think is a real bargain for a player who scored over 20 goals in the Netherlands last year for a team who got relegated, who were struggling. So the theory would go that the amount of chances that we create, he should be able to tuck that away at least.
I mean, if you were to tell me this window without knowing who the player was, that we would sign the top scorer in the Dutch league, you'd be quite impressed with that. I saw someone had tweeted all the previous top scorers in the Dutch league. I don't have them all off to hand, but they've all gone on to pretty good things. Now, I know you rightly raised the point, John, and I think it's where some of the doubt comes in about this signing. The fact that it is basically only last season. I think his previous record total was 9 goals or something like that. So we're very much hoping that it wasn't just a flash in the pan last season, but looking on his YouTube, which is always the dangerous thing to do, he does seem to score a lot of really good goals. As I say, a lot of dinked finishes, a lot of kind of towering headers. I don't even think he's massively tall, but he seems to be a good header of the ball. And to get him for 2.5 million just seems brilliant business, in the modern game. And Juranovic was the exact same. That's a Croatian international. It does seem like Celtic have looked in good areas this window. We've kind of scoured the world, basically, haven't we? We've signed, Israeli players. We've signed a player from Japan. We've signed a player from Russia. We've signed players from all over. It's been a definite change in the way we've done business from previously, when there seemed to be a real focus under Neil Lennon at looking down south, and you're obviously going to pay much more money when you look down south as opposed to what we've brought in this summer, Stevie.
Yeah, definitely, and it's one of the good things is it's not just a case of the contacts in Peter Lawwell's phone book and a loan for the City group anymore, which is great. And that was the one thing I was fearing. I thought we were really going to panic and it was going to be a case of the couple of lazy City group options, but no, it does look as if we went down a different route, and fair play to Celtic and the club for it. And as you say, Hamish, as well, it can't be overlooked that these guys have been capped, they are internationals and they've got that experience. I mean, it's the fact that Juranovic as well, I watched him in the Euros for Croatia against Scotland. He was fantastic, and it's mad that he's only got 10 caps, but you imagine he's not going to just stop there. He's going to get more and more while he's with us, and that will raise his profile, but also ours as well. And you never know, maybe more players in that area of the world and region could end up being fancying Celtic and coming to join us as well. It could raise our reputation in that respect if we've got these top internationals at our club, which is a good thing.
You see this conversation that we're having, it's interesting because it has leaped forward from negative to positive, but I kind of think it sums up the transfer window, because it's not as easy as saying the board haven't backed Ange or the board have backed Ange. It's not as easy as saying we're entitled if we expect more players, and we're bedwetters if we don't, or we do. And so I think that kind of sums it all up. Really, it's like there's positive and negatives to this window. I think a lot of there's a narrative going about that the board are screwing the fans again, they're screwing the manager. I think if you look at the players that we've signed, I don't think you can really argue that. I think if we were trying to do that, we wouldn't have brought in the players that we have, to be honest.
Could have done it quicker though, couldn't they? Joe Hart and Kyogo and McCarthy to a lesser extent could have been in time for Midtjylland.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there could have been more focus on trying to prepare the club for Midtjylland and that. But at the same time, I don't think I ever expected us to qualify for the Champions League this year. I think qualifying for the Europa League was a good marker for where we're going. So, I mean, you can pick holes in what we're doing, and we haven't done things perhaps quite as efficiently as we would like. But I still feel like the club have been trying to move forward, and I think if we could have brought in more players over the last couple of weeks, I think we would have. I don't think there was anything really holding us back. I'm not concerned about the finances at Celtic. I think we've brought in enough money over the last 12 months to consider that, we've got a bit to spend beyond what we already have spent. We're bringing in over £10 million from the Europa League. It's not as if we're skint, as much as that narrative goes about from some of our rival fans too. I don't think there needs to be extreme reactions to this transfer window. I think we've got a squad of talented players that could have been stronger. But I think that Ange has got a lot to work with to make us competitive in multiple competitions. And we'll just need to wait and see how it plays out.
We will indeed. John, tell us about whatever you want to call him, Jota, whatever. What do you know about him?
I know that he's not the finished product and that Ange will be improving him. That's not to say that he's going to be spending time playing friendlies and nonsense, on the sidelines. I think he will be played regularly. But I think he's a player who needs to make improvements to his game in terms of a final product. I think by all accounts he's got plenty of skill from the video stuff I've seen. He looks like quite an exciting player on the ball. That's someone that will take on players and try to beat his man and play with a bit of flair. But I think having that final product, that end product, that's something that he's going to need to work on under Ange. But I think what we've seen from Ange is that he drills that into his players constantly, to be looking for that final ball, to be looking for that quick ball into the box if it's on. So I think that, he will naturally have to pass more in the final third, and that could be to the benefit of his game. He played in La Liga last season, so he was playing at a decent standard. But, I think this is a step for his career, for him to prove that he can do it consistently, because it hasn't really been at Benfica. I think he's played for them 30-something times. He's not been, a regular for them. He's sent out on loan. Now he's on a loan to buy. I think it's, time for him to show that, he can take the next step of his career. And ideally, that's what we want from some players that we're signing. I know it's only on a loan basis, and it's always tricky because you don't know whether Celtic are going to exercise that option to buy. But I think this could be a good place for him to improve and, really getting amongst the goals and assists.
Yeah, I watched an interview that he did on YouTube. Really good grasp of English. I mean, we shouldn't really be surprised. I think, Portuguese people in general do, but that won't be an issue for him at all coming to the club. I think the fact he's been at a club in Benfica who pretty comparable to Celtic in terms of the expectations in that country is good news for us as well. I don't think he's going to be too shocked, albeit that he maybe hasn't played a lot of first team football for them. And the fact he's a proper winger as well. It was kind of a bit of an uncomfortable thing to say when Ryan Christie was playing so well for us, but I always did feel that basically having a central player wide left was going to leave you disadvantaged in some area. So I'm really glad we've got a left winger there now. Taking away the fact that it's a loan deal and your hatred of them, Stevie, what do you make of Jota overall?
Well, John's just sold me on him. What a fantastic football player. What an advert there, John. No, what I will say is that if you're Jota and you're looking at who's going to be playing through the mid, like, you're an out-and-out winger. You like to beat players and you like to just feed the striker. Come to Celtic, and who's your out-and-out striker going to be? Kyogo. So that's a dream for you right away. The fact that this guy's movement is exceptional, and that should be exciting enough. So if Jota, I'm sure will fit in for us. If the fact that Kyogo himself, his movement is just different class, and we saw what Ryan Christie managed to do with Kyogo. So I'm sure Jota will come in and he'll do okay for us. I just hope that he's consistent, but it remains to be seen. But then again, I know I'm taking the whole age, and it's a difficult situation for him as well, coming to Celtic when we're going through a transition period as well. So that will have to be taken into effect, and we're still trying to find our feet under the new manager. So I'm sure he'll get time. He has to, pretty much, if he's going to be a success anyway.
It's interesting because Abad is so direct and takes his man around outside. Got a feeling Jota will be coming inside much more, and we need a player who kind of comes in and buzzes around the box in the manner that Christie has been doing. Yeah. So I can see why he's been signed, to be honest. I'm not against that at all. I haven't seen him play a full game though, so how do I know? I'm no scout, I'm no expert, so we'll just need to wait and see in that one, like all of them.
Well, I've just turned push notifications on for Crystal Palace and possibly the most dire move of 2021 so far, but we'll wait and see if anything turns up on that front. We have lost three pretty not key players, but key players over the years for Celtic. It's been a kind of emotional day. Not for me, but for many a person who's been making a YouTube compilation of Messrs Griffiths, Christie or Edouard. You're in for a treat, everyone, because we're going to recreate a goal from each of those players live on the channel. Stevie, you've got Lee Griffiths, so what goal are you going for? I'll wind you up. You just need to tell me your favourite goal.
Why did you give me him? Come on, why did you not give me the better guys? Why did I get Griffiths? Why am I stuck with him? My favourite Griffiths goal, really. Am I having to go there? The free kick against Beersheva, there, next.
It was a cracker, wasn't it? We were there that night, John.
I just
Amazing.
don't like to give that guy credit, that's all. But yeah, it was a great free kick. I watched it, steaming on holiday. Well done, Lee. Brilliant. Can we just move on?
John, do you want can you beat
40
Stevie?
goal striker has walked out the door. No, for Griffiths, yeah, whatever. The free kick. Can I give you Edouard?
Right, okay.
Like Edouard against Hearts, Scottish Cup final. That's my favourite Edouard goal by a distance. I love the way he took that goal. I think it summed up everything good about Edouard. That's when he was making good off the ball movement. He kind of ghosted in behind the Hearts defence. Lustig with a header forward. The best thing about that goal is it takes ages for him to score it from the ball going through, but he scored it with his first touch, and I've always appreciated that. And I'm a sucker for the Scottish Cup. I'm a sucker for a cup final winning goal, and I think that stands the test of time for me as Edouard's one of his best goals, but certainly my favourite.
I like it. I hear you. It was really good. It brought a tear to my eye, but it's not beating Rangers, 10-man Rangers at Ibrox after just coming on as a sub and cutting inside and curling it into the net. One of the best goals we've scored at Ibrox in a long, long time. The game that basically made them take the huff and cut our allocation from 8,000 to 800. I was there that day. That's probably why I'm slightly biased. I wasn't at that cup final that you mentioned, but that goal from Edouard, incredible that day. Stevie, you got another one you want to raise?
Yeah, I love the big man's obscure kinda, but the big man's free kick against AIK, I thought it was exceptional. You remember the one? I think we won 2-0 at Celtic Park.
Yep.
Oh, what a goal! What a fantastic free kick. The technique, everything about it was just brilliant. I think the keeper even knew where Edouard was going to hit it, and he couldn't get anywhere near it. It was just a flawless free kick. So nice. One of my favourites.
How do you think Edouard's going to get on in the Premier League? Because I think it's really interesting. We've obviously seen a player like Virgil van Dijk go down and do well. Even Stuart Armstrong has gone down and done well. Edouard's obviously not been very good. Obviously Tierney, yeah. I mean, Edouard's not been at his top form for the last 8 or so months, but do you think he can go down there and, pretty much score regularly in the Premier League for Palace? I mean, that's a big ask. Do you think he can do that?
It comes down to whether you feel he's going through a blip at the moment or whether you feel this is just the new normal for Edouard. I tend to think that it's because he had checked out from Celtic, I think, last summer. And I'm not saying that in a hugely, controversial way that he wasn't trying or anything like that. I just think personally that mentally last summer, after having such a really good period prior to COVID, probably the best football he played for us, maybe that January to whenever COVID hit, he was exceptional those couple of months. Last season, I just kind of felt that he checked out from Celtic, and obviously all the other stuff going on wouldn't have helped that. If it's the Edouard of that, season that was interrupted by COVID, or even more so probably the previous year when he helped us win the treble, I honestly think he'll be getting another move very soon to probably a larger team in England, or maybe a team in Spain or France, because he's that good. I've said all along that I think his ceiling's higher than Dembele. I honestly still stick to that. As good as Dembele was, I still think Edouard on his day has more of a culture to his game. I felt Dembele was really quick and quite strong, but I feel like Edouard's a better footballer all round. I think he'll go on to be a really good player, and I think Celtic fans will remember him really, really fondly for the times he's brought. Obviously over the last year or so, mainly this season so far, people have kind of lost the plot with Edouard, which I get totally, because the team has been struggling in some games and he's not really been maybe pulling his weight as much as he should have, and he's certainly not been scoring the goals that he should have been scoring. See, Sunday for a perfect example of that. So I get people's frustrations, but I think now that he's moved on, I hope that people remember him mainly for the good times and hopefully not for the last 12 months. Stevie?
No, fully agree. I think if you look at what Edouard did for us in the grand scheme of things, it was more good than bad. Yeah, we'll remember this last 18 months has not been a vintage time for him, but as you're saying, that his form after we came back for Dubai in the 1920 season, which the guy was unplayable. I mean, the goal away to Copenhagen and everything in that stage, the wee chip, he just made it look so easy. There was a lot of players that couldn't do that, and it just seemed he was just so relaxed and happy playing his football. I really wish that season finished, and I wish we got to see more of that. Of course, that's going to be a massive regret. A lot of things were regretful after that, but nah, I think, I'm somebody that was frustrated with Edouard, yeah, but overall I look at it, the business that we got from him and the memories that we got was more good than bad, overwhelmingly good, shall I say, and I wish him all the best down there.
It comes down to the fact that we paid £9 million for him. You've got to remember, we got him for a season prior to that as well, because he was on loan, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
But we paid £9 million. Even if we'd have sold him for nothing tonight, or if he'd left at the end of the season, we'd get £9 million worth of value out of Edouard. Some of the goals he scored for us, what a brilliant signing he was overall.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think when you consider the money we're getting for him, reportedly from multiple people, seems to be about £15 million. The consensus on the reporting of the sell-on fee is 40% of that. So we're paying PSG, just over £2.5 million.
3 weeks' wages for Messi.
Yeah, exactly. So they're getting the much needed money they need to see them through the season from us. But I think that's it also makes sense that we've sold him now. I think you could make an argument for keeping him for another season and pushing for the automatic Champions League cash from the league win. But realistically, if he wants to go, then he needs to go. And it's a risk that we took last season and it didn't pay off. And it's probably not worth taking again this season. So take the money, bank that money, and then let's go for it. Another couple of two interesting bits of transfer news today that caught my eye from around Europe. Hector Bellerin's moving to Real Betis, a right back from Arsenal as a replacement for Emerson, who Barcelona bought back from them this summer, who is now heading to Tottenham Hotspur. So it looks like Hector Bellerin will be facing us in the Europa League. Also, one that's for you guys that I want to hear your thoughts on, Jack Hendry signs for Club Bruges. That's been confirmed. Celtic get a sell-on fee for that. I'm not sure quite what percentage is, but it's been reported to be 6 figures. So he's moved on immediately from his stand. As kind of promised, really, they kind of activated his loan option so they can make a profit of it, and that's kind of come to pass. So Jack Hendry's playing in the Champions League. What do you think of that?
Could make his debut against PSG in a couple of weeks. How do we feel about that, Stevie?
I mean, Jack Hendry up against Messi and Neymar.
Mbappe.
I don't think there's anything for him to worry about. I mean, he was fine for Hull a few seasons ago. He'll be fine here.
Well done, though. I mean, he's kind of. I mean, I did the interview, God knows how long, probably about 6 months ago now, with the Belgian journalist who was actually reporting it kind of earlier on, Junior Verbeek, I think his name was, and he actually said to me that he felt that Hendry would move on to a bigger club in Belgium this summer. I mean, Ostend have done incredible business. What did they pay us for him? And they've moved him on for, I think Sky are saying, as much as £8.6 million.
It's unbelievable.
It's
and
mad.
see, it's amazing from where he's come from, right? Because you think about back before he even signed there, he hadn't played for Celtic for years, and he went to Melbourne, I think, didn't he? Melbourne City.
Yeah.
And I think he did his knee in. I think he did his ligaments in. And then, the next summer he's away off to Belgium, and now he's, and he was highly rated in Belgium. Belgians were raving about him. Did he not win Player of the Year or something? So, it wasn't much of a surprise to see him move on, but 9 million quid for him seems like a bit much. Brendan Rodgers vindicated, though, as usual.
You predicted it, didn't you?
It just goes to show as well, though, doesn't it, that everyone who says that having a good Euros, a good international tournament in the summer is so vital, because you look at Jack Hendry and he was terrible for Scotland and it's not really had an impact on anything, has it? It's just been debunked, that whole myth.
Yeah.
Ryan Christie, what do we think, lads? Leaving Celtic for, and I hope there's no Bournemouth fans watching this, leaving Celtic for Bournemouth. I know they're a team that are kind of always flicking between the Championship and the Premier League, and from what I understand, they're a team that are growing under, I think, Scott Parker's the manager, and they're looking at, they're probably one of the favourites maybe to get promoted to the Premier League. They obviously missed out in the final or the semi-final last year of the playoffs. So I can understand to an extent why he's done it. It just seems a bit kind of strange leaving Celtic, where you could be a key player, to go to Bournemouth, guys.
Well, what his thinking behind that will be that he thinks Bournemouth can get promoted from the Championship. And I think they came close last season, so he'll be thinking that they can go up. I don't know. I understand what you're saying, but see, Christie to Bournemouth makes more sense to me than Christie to Burnley, for example. I know they're in the Premier League, but Bournemouth come across as a bit soft, and I just think Ryan Christie fits into that somehow. And I've been a fan of Christie over the years, but I can just see him fitting in there. It doesn't seem like he'll be under much pressure. I don't know, it just seems like a good fit for where he is at the moment. And Celtic tried to keep him. Ange wanted to keep him. And I think they were in contract talks up to this weekend, I think Ange confirmed. So, Celtic wanted him to stay, and he doesn't want to be here. So if he wants to go to Bournemouth and play there instead of Celtic, then I didn't want him here in the first place. I think he's got ability, but you need players who are committed to the overall project and direction of the club, as Ange has spoken about often. So I'm not too disheartened to see him go, to be honest with you.
I just think it just kind of sums up, and you kind of touched on it there, it kind of sums up where Christie is, both as a footballer and probably as a person as well, in terms of ambition. And maybe that sounds completely harsh, but I just think if he had a good 6 months for Celtic, I think he could have found a far bigger club as a free agent than going to Bournemouth. It's his decision, it's his career, so he's not really going to care what Hamish and 67 Hill thinks about it. But as you say, John, if he doesn't want to be here, I think Ange even made the comment after, I think it was a Dundee game, and he said if Ryan Christie isn't convinced to stay at Celtic after being out there and watching that, or maybe it was a Jablonec game, then, he can't do anything else really. And it just seems like Ange isn't going to keep players around who don't want to be there. He's said that many a time. I wish him well, but I just think he kind of flattered to deceive a bit for Celtic, maybe other than a 6 month period at the start of the 2019-2020 season. Stevie?
Yeah, I think the reason he's left is, I'm just going to put it out there, I think football reasons to an extent. I think a lot of it's lifestyle as well. Down there, I've read a lot that
he's good friends with Christopher Ayer
and Stuart Armstrong as well, I believe. Things like that. He's going to be on far more money as well. This down there will be, I know it sounds daft, but it's a far better climate and all that, especially for Britain anyway. Things like that with Christie do play a part in it. He just seems that type of individual. And while, and again, like Edouard, I don't have a lot of strong feelings I hate for Ryan Christie. He's somebody that I think he improved while he was with us, but he could have done a lot better as well with us too. And I know he started to turn the corner a wee bit in the last couple of months, but we didn't get enough out of him, in the last year or so. I think, realistically, it's probably best for both parties that Ryan Christie's moved on, but Celtic can have a player in Jota who wants to be here now and wants to impress and wants to do more for the team instead of just himself. That's my take on it though. But again, don't wish him any harm, all the best to him, but I think we'll move on just fine.
People are asking here in the chat, seeing if there's any breaking news or anything.
I think Edouard's just been announced, John.
Oh, there we go then. So
it's Edouard away.
He got to say it.
So Crystal Palace have signed Odsonne Edouard from Celtic in a 4-year deal, 7th signing of the summer. They tweeted just there saying an incredible talent, an iconic chant. So they're probably going to rip off a Celtic song, no doubt. I think it's obviously a Stone Roses reference. So Odsonne Edouard's no longer a Celtic player. We've already spoken about Edouard. It's disappointing, obviously, when a player leaves, but as I say, I think he's been probably checked out mentally for a fair bit of time. So I'm laughing at all the replies coming in. Yes, he's gone. Brilliant.
I don't get that. I mean, there's been a lot of chatter since the Rangers game. I'm not going to pick a fight with people because it just attracts unwanted attention. But I thought he was very poor against Rangers, but I think some of the chatter around Edouard's been a bit over the top, and I wish him well. I think he's been a great player for Celtic, and I hope he does well down there, because probably it'll benefit us. I'm sure we've got a sell-on fee, so if he goes down there and smashes it by Crystal Palace and moves, then they're talking mega money, and we're talking like a decent chunk of sell-on money, so I hope that he does do well. It also is a good advert for Celtic if a player goes down there and does well straight from the Premiership. It's obviously a good advert for Celtic. We've seen it with Van Dijk. He still gets spoken about in regards to Celtic, so that was years ago now. So I hope he goes down there and does well. But in terms of other news, I don't think there's anything. There's nothing. I don't think we're looking for any more players, or at least if it does happen, it's going to be a massive surprise. I can't think of another transfer deadline day where we're at 10 o'clock at night and something happens that we've completely not expected or not heard any sort of word of.
There was one, remember the Gudetti Skepovic one? I don't have exact times for that, but that was a late kind of surprise. Yeah. Remember there was a whole thing about them not being registered for the Europa League or something mad like that. Listen, we're going to stay on till 60 minutes, so we've got about 8 minutes or so to go. If you've got any questions you think, talking points you want us to touch on for the last few minutes, just put them in the chat and we'll get on to it. Stevie?
Can I ask something now? Mm-hmm. Going to you two guys as the 67 Hail Big Dogs. I said that I was a wee bit surprised that we didn't even inquire about Ali McCann. He's a player that I'd like to see at Celtic, and I think he'd add something to us. What about yous? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we scouted him last year. I think there was, if I recall correctly, we scouted him twice, or at least public. That got out in the public sphere. I'm sure we've had him watched loads of times because we watched players all over the division. But there was two reports specifically last year of Ali McCann getting scouted by Celtic. I think St Johnstone have been really set on this £3 million price for him. I think he's worth that, and I think Celtic should probably pay it, to be honest. But apparently we haven't wanted to. And I don't think St Johnstone are rushed to sell, so they wouldn't want to lower their valuation. I think his contract runs until 2023. So there's a whole lot of factors there about how I haven't moved for them. I mean, there's a few players for me around the Scottish Premiership. There's Lewis Ferguson at Aberdeen, who probably cost in that kind of price range. There's Kevin Nisbet at Hibs, who'd cost about £5 million by all accounts. Josh Doyle at Hibs as well. So there's a few players that we've been linked with over the last 6 months that we haven't really moved for. But with regards to McCann, I think we talked about it right at the start of the show. An area of the park we think we're weak is midfield, and I think Ali McCann would do a job there for us. Certainly if we have to rest McGregor or kind of take him out of the team for any sort of time. So I would be all for that, and it's a shame that hasn't happened for me.
I agree totally. I think the thing you're always looking for with these young players playing in Scotland, have they stepped up? Have they stepped up a level, and how have they responded to that? And Ali McCann, from what I hear, was the best player in the park when St Johnstone played away in Turkey against Galatasaray. I think he was again really good in both legs against the Austrian side. I think they're Austrian Lask Linz. He's an international. People kind of forget that. Northern Ireland, he's kind of their mainstay in the midfield for them. So I think he's a player who, I'm not saying he's going to be a Premier League, like an English Premier League player, but I think he'll certainly be, a very good player, and could certainly be a Celtic player. I would love to see us make it happen. Was it 3 million you said is the kind of rough figure? I mean, we would easily pay that for a player, playing similarly in Croatia or something like that. So I'd love to see us doing it. Not transfer related, Nathan, we didn't do a video yesterday, so and this news came out. Nathan is asking our thoughts on the Europa League 3:15 kick-off time. Stevie?
An absolute, I've got to say, I busted out laughing. I wasn't even raging, I just started laughing. It's an utter farce, but you've really got to hope the club are doing something to reimburse people that can't make it there. What's the crowd going to be for that, realistically? I mean, it's going to be such a record low, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and I think to be fair, I think the club are frustrated as well because it's to do with this climate conference coming up, and the police said we couldn't have a match on that match day, and so it had to be moved to another week. But then that clashed with Rangers, and then so we had to move that day as well. And most annoying thing for me is the reason it's in the afternoon and not at night is because of UEFA TV things, in the sense that they don't let you play a match of that standard in your country when they've got Champions League group stage matches on. And I think it's farcical. It's a total farce. And UEFA, I don't know why they have to live and die by this stance. There's a hill they die on every season for some team somewhere. And I don't really understand it. So I think what Celtic had done is that they had 3 match packages on sale, but they recognise that a lot of people won't make one of the games. And so for the people who can't make that game, they're going to sell individual tickets to season ticket holders on a priority basis, rather than just having them out on general sale immediately. So that's the way it's all going to work, I think. So it's really annoying, and I think it's stupid from UEFA, and it's a shame that Celtic haven't been able to kind of negotiate something better.
I love Celtic more than anything else, and I will talk up Celtic, for whatever it takes. But I don't think if PSG are playing Man City on a Tuesday night, there are going to be many people around Europe going, nah, I'm not going to watch that. I'm going to turn on Celtic Ferencvaros instead. It's just an absolute nonsense. It's from the same book that brought us the 6 p.m. kickoffs in 2010, 2011, I think it was, against St Johnstone, because we couldn't play a game while a Champions League game was going on. It's just the same old, rhetoric from UEFA, and it makes no sense. I've got sympathy with Celtic. I think, and I don't say this often, but I think genuinely Celtic are a bit stuck in this one, and I think it's good that they've done this option for supporters to kind of opt in or out and get the single match tickets. But yeah, the crowd that night is going to be really, really poor. And yes, people can have a wee laugh and a moan about it, but it's going to affect the team, I would suggest, because if that game's at 8 o'clock, as it normally would be, it'd be 60,000, wouldn't it, for that match? I think you'll probably be lucky to get 25, for a Europa League game against Ferencvaros, and that's with people taking half days and all that kind of thing. It's not going to be under the lights. The atmosphere isn't going to be as good. I think it could damage the team as well. But we'll get on to that. We will obviously have a reaction for you at whatever time that will be. And we'll get an early night that night, John, so it's not all bad. John Mulhern, should we get Sean Rooney for centre back? Anyone, Sean Rooney?
Never been convinced by the Sean Rooney or the Jason Kerr chat. I just don't think I don't know.
Jason Kerr, I think, went away to Wigan today.
Yeah, he went away to Wigan. He actually went
500,000, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really cheap. I think he's a good player, and I think he'll do well down there. But I've just never seen him as a good fit for Celtic. I don't know what it is. It might be an inner snob in me, but I've never been sold on this Sean Rooney, Jason Kerr chat.
Someone's just said Ryan Porteous there. We all know my feelings on Porto himself, and I don't want to get your channel done with any lawyers coming in, so no comment on that one, but that is my feelings on Ryan Porteous.
Finally, guys, I just had to move on there, sorry.
Yeah, you didn't know how to handle that one, did you?
No. Stevie, we're just nearly an hour. Thanks for joining us, by the way, but just let us know finally what you think of this Celtic window, and how do you think we're set up to go now for this season?
Well, we've got rid of our two very good players. We've brought in we don't know about the quality yet of the players that have been brought in, but I think the good thing about it is now I think Kyogo has been an absolute star for us, and I think he will improve the players round about us. So there is that. I think it's a bonus that we've got him, and I'm just hopeful. I'm hopeful that we can kick on. I mean, Sunday was disappointing, yeah, but that's us now. There's no excuses after we've got these players in. We know who's left. We know who's came in, and I think Ange, when you consider what Ange has had to work with from day one, he's now got his own players in, and hopefully he'll be able to kick on. He'll be able to use the international break to plan what he's going to be doing, and I'm hoping the game against Ross County is going to be one that's actually exciting instead of being apprehensive about it. And I'm looking forward to it already.
Would you have taken this window, John, if you were offered it at the start?
I think I would have, yeah. I think I would have, and I think it's possible to be both disappointed with the window and accept why it's turned out the way it has. Again, I'll say I don't think the squad is as strong as it could be or should be, but at the same time, I'm happy with the players that have come in. It's going to be interesting, and I think that the feeling of the fans is going to be interesting too. And I think that all plays a part. You know, we saw last season how quickly disharmony between the fans and the group of players or the club or the board can kind of impact things. And I think there could well be discontent, you know, moving forward at some of the decisions made in this transfer window not to bring certain players in. So we'll need to see how that pans out. I think we're a bit light in certain areas. Overall, though, to answer your question, I would have taken this transfer window before you started. If you'd said we're going to sign 9 quality players and have Shaw and Urhoghide as well, I think I probably would have been pretty happy with that. So we'll just need to see how it goes. As I say, I'm happy that Ange is working with this group and getting performances out of this group, and we'll see where it goes. With Edouard and Christie, you know, we're going to see the real like Stevie just said, I think we're going to see the Ange's real team here going forward and you know, try and figure out the best way. I think we've got a team that can be competitive on multiple fronts, but I don't think we've done anything to say that we've guaranteed success this season, far from it.
And you wonder, with the potential 40 million on the line for winning the league, you just wonder if Celtic could have gone slightly more out this season and got those 2 or 3 extra players in. But then again, as I say, maybe I and others are just never going to be totally satisfied. Guys, we're over an hour, so we'll sign off now. I kind of feel Celtic have probably done their business for the window. It's been fun. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for tuning in. There's been, you know, a lot of you on watching, I think, pretty much the whole thing. So we really appreciate that. We appreciate everyone watching afterwards as well. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you've not done it yet. Maybe an international break, but we are not stopping at all with the content. I believe Scott McDonald is going to be the big video tomorrow. We'll be getting his thoughts on the kind of stuff we've been chatting on today's live stream, and plenty more stuff coming, as well as we just kind of wish and hope that Celtic are coming back as soon as possible. I like Scotland, but I really hope that this international break flies in, because I miss Celtic already. John, Stevie, thanks very much. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll speak to you very soon.